Today is combining like terms, so let's start off with a couple of definitions. The first definition I have is like terms. Like terms are two or more terms that have the same variable or variables raised to the same power. So like terms are two or more terms that have the same variable or variables raised to the same power. Unlike terms is our second one. Unlike terms are terms with different variables or terms with the same variable but the variables are raised to a different power. So unlike terms are terms with different variables or terms with the same variable with the variable raised to a different power. Let's show you what I mean here. 5x plus 7x. These two terms have the same variable and the variables raised to the same power. Oftentimes we refer, if we don't see an exponent, we consider it 1. Alright? Now we can combine these, and this is how we combine them. We use the distributive property. You can see that they both have x in common, which means that's what's in the front of our distributive property. Then, after x is taken care of, you can see that we have 5 plus 7 left over. So we factor that x out. You can see if we were to check this, and we went 5 times x, that's 5x plus 7x. So we can do it like that. So here, we've used the distributive property. Now, we can combine, add 5 and 7 inside the parentheses. So we can add it like this. That's 12. Now we can use the commutative property to switch that back and get that coefficient in the front. So 5x plus 7x is equal to 12x. Here we used the distributive property, and here we used the commutative property. Alright, let's do another one. Here you can see that 5y, negative 8y, and 4y all have the same variable, and it's raised to the same power. Again, it's raised to 1. So we can use the distributive property, bring y out in front. That leaves us with 5 minus negative 8 plus 4. We can then combine all of these. That's y. 5 minus negative 8. Two negatives make a positive. That's 13. That makes 17. So here was the distributive property. This was adding. Alright, and then here is a commutative property, give us 17y. And I use the commutative property there. We want to simplify. Well, here we do not have all of these as like terms. You can see this is not a like term with these two. So what do we need to do first? Well, we should rewrite it. 6xy plus 4xy minus 3a. I've used the commutative property there. Okay? Now you can see I have like terms here, so I'm going to use the distributive property. This was commutative. Distributive property, xy times 6 plus 4 minus 3a. That gives me xy times 10 minus 3a, or 10xy minus 3a. Here I used the commutative property. So hopefully you're seeing, as long as my x's and my y's, I have like terms, then really I can either add or subtract those coefficients. Let's look at this one. Now remember, if there's not a coefficient in front of it, it's like there's ones right in front of them. Alright? So here I have x to the 5th power. I'm going to use the commutative property to write plus x to the 5th power plus y to the 3rd power plus y to the 3rd power. That's the commutative. Now I can add these. Alright? So that's x to the 5th power times 1 plus 1 plus y to the 3rd power times 1 plus 1. That's the distributive property. Now this is x to the 5th power times 2 plus y to the 3rd power times 2 then that is 2x to the 5th power plus 2y to the 3rd power, using the commutative property again. And now I've simplified it. Got one more. Here we go. So let's figure out our like terms. Now they don't have to be in the same order, because remember we can use the commutative property to flip them around. So actually, let's do this. We go 2x to the 2nd power, y to the 3rd power, plus xy. Now I'm going to say it's plus negative xy to the 3rd power, x to the 2nd power, plus negative 5yx. Now why did I add those plus signs in there? Hopefully you can see that this is the same thing. Alright? Really all I did was I used the identity property here to add that plus 1, multiplying by positive 1. Alright? I did that so I can use the commutative property to do this. 2x squared y cubed plus negative 8 y cubed x squared plus xy plus negative 5yx. So I use the commutative property. I'm going to use the commutative property again to swap these terms here and here. So it's going to be 2, this is going to stay the same, plus negative, and this is where I'm going to make the swap. I'm going to put x first, y second, just like the term before it. This stays the same, and then I'm going to make another swap here, swapping my x and y. So I use the commutative property here again. Now I'm going to use the distributive property. Now, to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to write the 2 plus negative 8 in front and the x, y in the back. I'm going to do the same thing here. Plus, there's a 1 there, plus negative 5, and the xy in the back. This was the distributive property. This equals negative 6, and now you can see that I'm not going to have to use the commutative property at the end. Plus negative 4 x, y. And I am done. So this can take a while, but you guys know everything. We're just breaking them down into these steps right here. So we're just using those. Alright? Let me know what questions you guys have. We'll talk about this more later on. See ya.